I will say we're catching up to this story probably much later than most people in our audience. You and I were in transit, and I think yesterday finally saw the video that Jordan had put out where he responds to apparently being suspended from Twitter, but suspended with the agreement that he would have to delete his tweet about Ellen/Elliot Page in order to be welcomed back. And Jordan said something for which he was mocked by many people, which is that he'd rather die than delete the tweet. Now, I don't think anybody who has been less predictive than Jordan Peterson about the catastrophe of these linguistic games and their implication for a wider kind of failure is in any position to criticize him for saying that, because I know what he's saying. He's not saying, I'd rather die than delete a tweet. What he's saying is, I know what that implies, right? Mm-hmm. This is
a hill I've long seen. Most of you could not see this hill. Mocked me years ago when I was on this hill.
Right.
And I mean, this is metaphorically, this is the hill that I'll die on, is what he's saying.
Well, and he's saying it having correctly, he was mocked before for saying, hey, Bill C-19 is compelled speech, right? I won't do it. I asked him personally the first time I met him. I said, look, I got a lot of trans students. I call them what they asked me to call them, which, by the way, was never they. Right. It was never Zer. It was always he or she. Mm-hmm. Right. And he said, I'll call what they asked me to, as so long as they are making an attempt to present that way. Right. He's not an unreasonable guy. Mm-hmm. He's just saying you can't.
Nor is he mean.
You can't force me. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You can't force me to say stuff. Right. And forcing me to say stuff is actually one step down the road, down an authoritarian path that is actually well understood. And so anyway, what he's saying is, look, I, Jordan Peterson, am not going to participate in that because I know what it is. As trivial as the example may seem, I know what it is, and I'm not going to be part of that thing, which I have to say I respect and admire, even if I might make a different choice in his shoes, right? Mm-hmm. Because the reason he didn't want to delete it, according to the video, is that the way Twitter does not explain what it is that he's done that violates the rules, and he goes through a taxonomy of what it might be. All of it is absurd, but there are various things. But what he says is, Twitter says you will delete the tweet, and by doing so, acknowledge that you violated the rule against harassment or threatening or whatever it might have been. Yeah. When in fact, what he has done is he is effectively dead named, which is, you might notice, not illegal, right? It's not even obvious that it is in and of itself it's a made up crime, right? And I would point out, you and I have actually covered this very issue on this podcast. I don't remember exactly when it was. Maybe we can figure it out. But we talked about the fact that Bradley Manning is now reported by his Wikipedia page, and I checked before the podcast, it's still true. Mm-hmm. Bradley Manning has been transmuted into Chelsea Manning, and that has been imposed on the piece of history in which he conveyed classified documents to WikiLeaks. Right. And the point is, it says Chelsea Manning did it.
Which is absurd, but it's even more obviously absurd when you take Bruce/Caitlyn Jenner.
Right.
Caitlyn Jenner was not an Olympic award-winning athlete in whenever that was.
Decathlon winner in the men's division.
It was not.
Right.
And it's not that sport is the most important thing that we are fighting for. It is that sport is so obvious. It is so obvious in sport that men who transition to calling themselves women and presenting as women will never be, cannot be women. And if they went through puberty as men, as boys into men, they will always have male characteristics that do not change no matter what their circulating androgen levels change to, no matter what. So Caitlyn Jenner is not an Olympic award-winning athlete. Bruce Jenner is. Those two personas exist in the same body, right? When Caitlyn Jenner dies, Bruce Jenner dies. And the idea that by saying Bruce Jenner, you are dead naming, really? Bruce Jenner is dead? There's one human being, and they have changed persona, and they have changed the way they present to the world, but it is one human being.
Yeah, and so a couple things. One, this is clearly true. In both of the cases that you and I are talking about, not only are we talking about a matter of public record, we are talking about the ability to describe historical facts.
Right.
You cannot get in the road of people describing. It's not disrespectful to say Bradley Manning conveyed classified documents to WikiLeaks, was incarcerated, right, and then transitioned under incarceration, right? There's nothing disrespectful about that. It's just a simple description of facts. And the idea that dead naming is part of it, a simple description of facts, no, this is beyond Orwellian, right? Or maybe it's not. It's hard to get beyond Orwell, but it's pretty solidly Orwellian to tell people, oh, no, you can't describe things that are just simply true and matters of record.
Yeah.
And I would point out, Wikipedia reports this wrongly. The New York Times reported it wrongly in the Bradley Manning case. Rolling Stone does the same thing. The point is we are accepting this change in the rules that obviously is incompatible with a functional society without ever having discussed what the costs and benefits of that change are. And that is alarming. Now, I tweeted something right before our stream. I just simply described Bradley Manning's conviction, incarceration, etc. I just described it factually. Now, my guess is Twitter's not going to do anything about it, right? Did I dead name Chelsea Manning by mentioning that Bradley Manning existed and was a he? No, and I doubt Chelsea Manning would say so. But the point is, all of this, and Jordan makes this point in his video very clearly, the whole point of this is the arbitrary application of the rules. It's not about the rules. The point is we want the right to get rid of those that we deem trouble, right? And so the point is the arbitrary application is the point, right? Now maybe they'll come after me, and
it's like a low posted speed limit in a town.
It's exactly it.
Where most people who drive above the speed limit never get stopped, but almost anyone is at risk of getting stopped because almost everyone is going what the speed limit should be. And therefore, when you do get pulled over, if you happen to be, black or Arab or, whatever it is in that town,
Jewish,
in that place,
hippie, gay, right, whatever it is,
the police have cover. And, this is maybe a somewhat dated example at this point, but low posted speed limit rules are used to used so that the authorities can selectively apply them. And in this case, the authorities is the woke mob.
Right. Exactly. Now, the question is, this doesn't show up, right? The beauty of selective enforcement from the point of view of authoritarians who, aspire to being petty dictators is that they are left with discretion. The vagueness of the rules is part of that. The fact that you aren't told what it is, Jordan, it's a tweet. It's not very long, but there are 3 potential places in there that they might have flagged him, and they don't say which it is. So he doesn't say which of them he's acknowledging if he deletes the thing, right? So it's vague to begin with. You're not given information, and there's no venue where you could go and say, our friend Dr. Rollergator is still suspended from Twitter for facetiously invoking the idea of a slap with a glove, which is in itself symbolic, as we talked about on our last stream. So that, the point is some people are going to be exposed to this, others will not. That's a feature, not a bug. That's the point of the system, is to be able to arbitrarily wield power where you want and to immunize those that you don't want to do this to, which is a mechanism of control. And it's very serious that it gets in our venue for discussing important issues, unfortunately, which is, of course, what Elon Musk was animated by in his pursuit of Twitter to liberate it.
You speak in the past tense.
Well, as far as I know, it's on hold. I hope he revives it, and I hope that the episode with Jordan Peterson functions like the Leah Thomas episode in Swimming did, where it's so obviously insane that the point is scales will fall from many eyes over it. Yeah. The last thing I wanted to say, though, is Jordan, in his beautifully lit video.
Beautifully lit?
Yes. It's marvelously lit.
Literally?
Yes. It's very well done. Production values
Okay,
are...
you're not talking metaphorically lit.
Oh, it's on fire, but it's also beautifully lit.
Okay.
Anyway, he ends up in the trap that we also have talked about here, where he is forced to explain why something that's obviously nonsense and dangerous is nonsense, right? And so he finds himself at length in this chair trying to make it clear enough that everyone will understand exactly what absurd thing has taken place. And I still believe, and I do not know the mechanism, but I still believe those of us who see this for what it is have to figure out how to free ourselves from the obligation of answering the sophists, right? The fact is, history happens. It's messy. People may harbor mean intent that you cannot prove. You cannot go around prosecuting because you think you can detect somebody's mean intent in a particular tweet. That's not how it works, right? And so anyway, somehow we have to free ourselves from the obligation to respond. And in Jordan's case, I don't think he had a choice, but it is interesting. You can see if you just watch the thing and you listen to him working hard to explain in a way that it's clear enough and that he doesn't trip over any of the tripwires that have been arrayed around the place. It's pretty clear what's taking place.